So, like, first of all, I want to thank each and every one of you for coming. And if there's anyone here with the media, we appreciate your coming. I don't really see anyone. So if you will silence your cell phone. And I will repeat this. I do this every meeting, so if you silence it and it still rings, if you just go outside in the hall, answer it, you can come back in and take your seat. Having said that, I'm going to call on Commissioner Rushing to lead us in the invocation and prayer.
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for all your love, grace, and mercy, Lord. Just thank you for each and every one here. Please lead, guide, and direct this country, this state, and this county, Lord. Lord, I ask a special prayer on the ones on the front line, the doctors and the nurses and the first responders going through all this, that because they can't go home and hide. Lord, I'd like to ask for you to be with the teachers in our schools this week, Lord, as we get that back up and running. Please lead, guide this commission. Let every decision we make be pleasing you. These things we ask in Jesus' name. Amen. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
President of Corporate Board of York County, hereby call the roll for those on the governing body. All those present shall answer by saying aye. Chairman Roy Thompson. Vice Chairman Anthony Simmons. Commissioner Ray Mosley. Commissioner Jeffrey Stringer. Commissioner Kurt Hill. Commissioner Timmy Rushing. Commissioner Walter Gibson.
Here.
I have determined that we have all members of the Board of Commissioners present, therefore we have a quorum to conduct business for the good of the citizens of Bullock County. I yield the floor to the chairman.
We're now scheduled to have a public hearing that should be better. Hopefully all of you can hear me now. Have a public meeting on our millage rate tax levy for the calendar year 2020. And I think the finance department is going to lead this discussion.
Request permission for the county manager to make an opening statement, please.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. Of course, the reason we're having this hearing, one of three scheduled in the next several days.
Tom, let me stop you just a second. This chairman has made a mistake. He wants to correct it. Before I entertain a motion to approve the general agenda, do we have any other discussion or modifications? Do we have a motion to approve general agenda?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second. Have a motion and a second. All those in favor, show of hands. Unanimous decision. Now, you can proceed.
Thank you. As you know, this is one of three hearings scheduled over the next several days to consider maintaining the existing general tax levy and millage rate for the county as required by state law. You know that you are given an opportunity to roll back the millage rate, which is typically and statutorily caused by what I would describe as pre-COVID period inflation of appraised values on business property and new construction during what was then a hotter or warmer economic situation, and it ultimately increased the tax digest to promote these hearings. For most people, I think the so-called increase is non-existent unless the property assessments have gone up because they live in a hot selling neighborhood, and it isn't because we're raising the millage rate. You will recall that last year at this time we did roll back the rate approximately half a mil, and we would have recommended doing so this year were it not for the pandemic. The pandemic is real, and it can threaten our financial position. When we submitted the budget, I think there were less than to you, the county commission, back in late May, early June, I think we had less than 40 reported cases of COVID-19 in our community. And now I think, excuse me, I think it's somewhere north of 1,300. We did project a $2 million deficit without a rollback that could reoccur again next year if the economy doesn't recover. And we haven't changed any of our assumptions about the budget. We have attempted to trim or cut back costs. We have offered no employee raises this year. We've cut back on other non-COVID related expenses. You know, we laid off solid waste attendants who were part-time workers. Meanwhile, it's still uncertain how much additional COVID-19 expenses will occur to retrofit our buildings and do other interventions, or possibly offer help to public health when it's needed. We don't have utilities, say for example, as the city of Statesboro does, to subsidize the general fund. Though I believe this year, like many other local governments, they are also having hearings where they intend not to roll the millage rate back. Yes, there are some local governments who are, but in my opinion, they're playing a game of chicken where they risk coming back with a bigger tax hike down the road if the pandemic either continues or it escalates. So I think we have to be very, very cautious and maybe set ourselves up for an opportunity to roll back if we can get society and the economy back to normal. And I would also note that you may recall that the state of Georgia lowered its income tax last year, saying that they would do so this year, but they chose not to do so because they are in a similar budget situation. But unlike us, they don't have to make public notice and be necessarily transparent to all the citizens, where by statute they ask us to be, and we're willing to do so. So having said all that, I'll defer to the staff, either the CFO or the assistant county manager, if they have any further comments, which if they do, I'm sure will be of greater value than what I just gave you. Or on the other hand, if you have any questions or comments for any of us, we stand ready to respond.
I think we have a participant.
Good morning. I'll just reiterate what Mr. Couch just said to you. Our roles are to provide the best guidance to you, the board, that we can, and to give you the best information so that you can make firm decisions with firm foundations with the knowledge that you have. And it's my conviction today that we not roll back the millage rate. We did everything that we could this year to try to balance the budget, but due to projected revenue erosion, that was not possible. So as you know, this year, we did approve a budget that would use some of our fund reserves to bridge that gap. And for those reasons, I would just uphold Mr. Couch's recommendation today that you hold firm the millage rate and not roll that back.
Now, do we have any questions or discussion from the commissioners? Hearing none, let me share with you, yesterday I called and talked with John Scott, Chief Tax Commissioner, and he shared with me that there was 31,500 parcels of property, that over 27,000 of those parcels would have no change. They would have no increase in value. And then I asked him, I said, how would this affect the homeowner that had a home that was valued at $100,000? He said, if a rollback occurred, they would save $6.35 with a $100,000 home. He said $150,000 home that with the rollback that they would save $9.42. You know, that doesn't sound like much, but coupled with that all together, It is some, but I do wanna reiterate, we had a $2 million deficit, so, and we did have a rollback last year. Correct me if I'm wrong. We did apply the rollback last year, so, I too am in agreement of not having the rollback this year. So now, I'm gonna open it up again to any discussion from, or comments from the board. I'll ask our county attorney, we're just simply gonna, we don't need a motion, I'm just gonna close the public hearing or.
Well, I think you have to,
Public
opportunity to speak.
Public.
Yeah. On this topic.
All right, is there anyone in the public that would like to make any comments about the, rollback versus no rollback as far as taxes? Hearing none, and I'm gonna ask for a motion to close the public hearing. Have a motion and a second, any more discussion? All those in favor of the motion, show of hands. Unanimous approved. Thank you all very much for the presentation. We're gonna move next into our public comments and listen carefully to what I'm fixing to say, because there has been some confusion in the past, with some not exactly understanding how much time that they have. And we will use the time clock this morning. I'll recognize those citizens who have signed up to address the board. And once you address the board, once you start, first of all, you'll come to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Once you start, you will have 4 minutes to state what's on your mind. And then if we have any questions or discussion, then we will address you with those. So the 4 names that I have, and we're gonna start with Mr. Danny Carty to begin with, and if you'll come to the podium and state your name and address.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Danny Carty. I live on 850 Danny Carty Road, Statesboro, Georgia address. And the reason I'm here, this started about 2 years ago. I called Mr. Thompson, and me and him talked several times. Rocky Ford Highway, when it was resurfaced, they didn't even put any rumble strips. I brought it to his attention, they came out and put some that didn't last 30 days. And that's a dangerous intersection where Rocky Ford Highway crosses 4-lane highway. I don't know if y'all travel that road, but it's like an interstate now, that 4-lane. And they've been several people killed there. And there's no rumble strips. We need a flashing sign, one of these solar signs. We talked to them about that, and I went there this morning before I came here. And everybody depends on these GPSs on these phones and in your automobiles to get you where you're going now if you don't know where you're going. I went towards Rocky Ford and turn around and come back with the GPS on the Ford address. If you looking off and waiting on this lady to tell you to stop when you get to that highway, that ain't gonna happen. So I'm just letting you know that too. But we, like I say, I've talked to Roy, and evidently we can't get nothing done. So I wanted to bring it to the whole commission. Also this morning I noticed, and you can ride up there for yourself a little. When you're coming down that high hill coming from Rocky Ford, you're up in the trees. The trees that's in the bottom, the limbs hanging inside the highway, you cannot see your signs until you're getting on. So that needs to be addressed too. So I wanted to bring it to commission, talk to Roy, and it's been 2 years. Especially when this Christmas traffic goes to his place, people from out of town that don't know where they at. My daughter-in-law got hit head on 2 years ago, where somebody went down the wrong side of that highway. So that's the reason I got started in this. But, so I would like for y'all to help Roy or whatever he needs to get something done about this, you know, these rumble strips. There's no warning. People that don't live around here, they don't know. And, one other quick thing. I don't want to draw attention off of this, but I do want to bring it up. Whoever came up with the idea of crowning these roads, sloping them from ditch to ditch, all of you know, the faster water runs, the more washes it cuts. That's the school I went to when I worked for the county. It tells you that. Anyhow, and they try it, some ditches are that deep, or when you cut it, you almost got a house top. And that water runs, it says on Clay Hill. You get over to the side, you better not have your coffee cup full, because when you lean over, it's gonna spill out your floorboard. That's how steep some of these hills is, the roads on our end of the county. So, I would like for y'all to address that, but the main thing is the rumble strips and some kind of warning on Rocky Ford Highway. And that's all I gotta say. I appreciate it. And Roy, I'll let you handle it. I mean, y'all got any questions, talk to Roy. Me and him talked several times.
Give you 4 minutes is a long time.
Yeah, it sure is. I can say a lot in 4 minutes. Probably more than y'all wanted to hear.
All right, I'm gonna open it up now for the commissioners. Do y'all have any questions? And then we'll bring in some of the public works, folks, and we can address maybe these issues. Commissioners?
Roy, you talk to any of these state board members? I know you probably have, but that might would help us to get the ball rolling. I'm not sure. Mr. Grantham over there and Mr. Purcell over here.
Yes, sir, I have.
Probably already talked to them.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Anyone else?
And by the way, one thing, I talked to the state representative, John Burns, which is on the, state, the DOT Appropriation Board. And the state is actually trying to do something on 25, but he said the county is responsible for what I'm talking about, not them. And one thing I'd like to throw in there, next time y'all have roads resurfaced, put it in your contract, get them to put some rumble strips to these roads. Other counties are doing it, and they get good rumble strips, not junk.
Back to the commissioners. Any other comments? All right, we're gonna ask now, Mr. Carty, you can go back to your seat and,
Thank you.
we'll ask.
Thank y'all.
Yes, sir, thank you very much for coming. All right, if you step up, Mr. Deal, if you step to the podium.
Brad Deal, County Engineer. I was going to respond, Mr. Thompson spoke to me about putting some rumble strips on Rocky Ford Road at 25. And we have a striker project that's in progress right now, and that was one of the things that we added to the project. I don't think they've installed them yet. They're working right now though on the project. So probably in a few days we should have rumble strips on Rocky Ford Road there. And as far as the resurfacing, we have been installing rumble strips on roads that we're resurfacing. Last year, I'm trying to remember all the roads that we did, but Malvern Pond Road was one of them, and we installed rumble strips as part of that project, and they seem to be working pretty well. Any other questions?
Thank you very much. Mr. Butler, would you like to add anything? Maybe the dirt road issues?
Good morning, Dave Butler, Public Works Director. The dirt road issues as far as crowning the road and pulling from ditch to ditch or whatever is Mr. Carty referenced. Every road is different, and every road takes a different style of work. The issue of the ditches And when Mr. Partee referenced the training that he had, that was one of the things that they talked to us about, was opening up our ditches and allowing more space for water to flow so it doesn't concentrate into such a high velocity of water. When it's high velocity, it moves more dirt. But you also have to have a crown on the road so that the water runs away to get off of the roadbed itself into the low-lying area of the ditch. That's a work in progress. We're doing it. We've crowning roads everywhere, and that's just the nature of road work. Your highways, paved roads are crowned. They're crowned to a less percentage because of hard surface. But as far as what we're doing, we're looking at each road individually, and we're doing that according to what the standards are in the Better Back Road Management guidelines for state Georgia.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, y'all have any questions of either Mr. Butler or Mr. Deal? All right, thank you. I might add something, and this was about 2 years ago. Mr. Cartier approached me. I forgot where we were at, but the conversation always stuck into my mind is because he shared with me that his daughter pulled up off of Old River Road onto Highway 25 and turned short. She didn't go all the way across the road. She turned short of Highway 25 and went down the wrong lane. And at that time, we were talking about the excess traffic that TMT Farms has created out in that way. I made a comment to him that if it gets to be a problem, that we would close TMT Farm. And we have talked several times, and about the traffic and the rumble strips and things like that. I don't know whether rumble strips are going to be the answer or not, unless we use something about a foot tall. They will help. I know at the other end of Old River Road are some rumble strips, and I run over those, and they do help. But I figured this morning when he asked to come that we would mention the traffic at TMT Farms, and it is a problem. So to a point that I'm not ready to sign my signature to this, but I think we're going to close TMT Farm Christmas drive-through, and due to the fact of this situation, and we hate to, and that's a may or may not. I'm not trying to be wishy-washy, but if that's the cause of people turning wrong, going down the wrong way, then it is a hazard. So I do not want to go or hear about anybody's funeral and them having a wreck because they've been out of TMT Farms and looking at Christmas lights. So, is there any other questions from the commission? If not, then Mr. Carter, we appreciate your coming this morning. And I'm going to now call Ms. Aline D. Hendricks up to the podium.
Good morning. My name is Arlene Hendricks, and I reside at 156 Anderson Parish Road. And I'm here for a specific reason in reference to my father's property at 156 Anderson Parish Road and the former address is Route 45 in Portal, Georgia. When I returned, I'm the administrator of the property. When I returned to the property in 2007, my husband at that time was here, and he had said there were problems with the line on the property lines, that there was some effort to change property lines out there. He did whatever he could. He's deceased since 2015, but I made efforts to work out there, try to find out what's going on, and we got a lot of things on my plate, so I didn't really follow through, but now I have to follow through with this issue because, I mean, I don't need anything, but I have children and I have grandchildren, and I need this issue addressed. Since I called this office out here, I've gotten some action on property because there were deer stands on the property, and I had spoken, I had given the person the right to hunt there, not to establish any deer stands on the property, but he did establish deer stands on the property. And at the end of, from 2018 to 2019, they gave him right to hunt. After that, I told him it was terminated because I didn't allow him to, establish deer stands on the property, but to hunt on the property. He continued to, keep those deer stands on the property. So what I did is I went to, Hunting and Game Commission over in Netter, Georgia. And they said they were going to send a ranger out to speak to him in reference to that issue. Apparently they didn't. But this past week, I called the ranger out there, but he called me back. I called that office and he called me back, James Miller. And he's meeting with me this coming Friday on the property. But, so in the meantime, yesterday, I had one man who established the deer stands out here. He told me that he was moving the deer stands and he was moving that particular day to move those deer stands. And what had happened was the question is, when I came back to the property in 2007, when I came back to the property in 2007, I realized there was a change down here in the office. And I found out there was county officials involved with that change. I don't call them any names because I still have work to do in finding out what's going on out there. It's not about me creating any problem with anybody. I'm not trying to do that. I'm trying to establish what is fair and what's right. And I think after it comes to this point, I have to do that because I have grandchildren and I have children that need to be satisfied about this issue. So they keep asking me about it. But it's on the right as you come on. The property is located off of Highway 80 West. After you come off that road, after you make a right leaving here on the road, the property is on the right. So as you approach that property, one of the main issues is the line on the right side of the property. There is a stream that crosses Highway 80 and run down that property all the way down to run into what used to be Mr. Willie Parish property. There was Willie Aiken's property on the right, my father's property on the in between his property and Joe Reed's property. Then Mr. Wiggins' property was before our property. I am very familiar with the property because my father used to take me. I was familiar with the woods and the property lines, basically. I know the property line. But I'm trying to reestablish those lines, proper lines. I've gotten maps. I've had problems with security out there. I'm quite sure the sheriff department knows me by now. Because I've had the problem with security out there. People entering the house. I've changed my locks 3 to 4 times out there. Interfering with my neighbor.
Ms. Hendricks, I hate to stop you at present time.
I know I probably have 4 minutes, right? Should I finish?
Well, that 4 minutes has been used.
Okay.
Plus,
I think on that.
I'm a little hard of hearing, and I think I had allowed for another minute and 43 seconds.
Okay.
But sounds like, and Jeff, sounds like you have a property line issue.
Yes, and it's not just involving the property line, but what has gotten in the midst of this is that there have been county officials that have not assisted me in straightening out that issue, and in fact, that they hindered me in straightening out that issue.
Okay, but Jeff, could you offer any suggestion to her as far as
Well,
establish a property line?
I can say this, the Board of Commissioners doesn't have any jurisdiction over property line disputes, so that's exclusively the jurisdiction of the superior courts in Georgia. So if you have a dispute with your neighbor over where the property line is, you can't agree on it, then really the only resolution is to go to Superior Court and let a judge decide. But is that what you're asking for, some help in that regard? Because that, commissioners really can't do anything about that.
Well, I spoke to, some, public officials here. Judge Delois was one, and also here the assessor's office was one. And according to the assessor's office, this was my father's property, was the only property they had assessed. All the properties in the county, but this was the only property that they had not completely moved to the proper road because there was some problem with the property line. So apparently you do get involved here with property line.
Well, the assessors, though, they just go by what's filed over at the Superior Court.
Well,
And that's how they determine. The tax maps don't establish your property on that. It's just, if you think there's a problem with the property line, you need to get, I would encourage you to go hire an attorney to look at it and see if there's, if there's something that's been misfiled over
Who am I
there.
speaking to?
Ma'am?
Who's speaking now? Who's speaking now?
County Attorney Jeff Akins.
I'm speaking,
What is your name?
Jeff Akins.
Okay.
Do you have an existing survey of the property? That's been filed?
I did have, not recent, I had any survey done. But my father, attempted to sell portions of the property on the left side of the property. And when he did that, and that was in the 70s, when he attempted to sell property, that property was, that is part of the problem that we have out there. The assessor, the, surveyor came out, and he supposed to have sold only that portion of the left side of the property. He just came straight across the back, completely across the back part of the property, separating my father's property. I came out here in reference to that issue. I know my time is up, so I will come back to the meeting, and I will have more information, but I think it does involve the county here, the county officials here, because your county officials is part of that problem.
Yes, but, well, you might, another option would be to get a surveyor, but I'd be glad to speak with you some more, Ms. Hendricks, after the meeting, but the Board of Commissioners really doesn't have any jurisdiction over this.
Ms. Hendricks, we do appreciate your coming, and you're certainly welcome to come back at any time that you so desire. And, next is gonna be Mr. William Emily.
I withdraw my request.
Okay, so Mr. Emily is withdrawing his request to speak this morning. So we're gonna move to Ms. Deborah Lewis, and you are next.
Can I take this off on up here with
Yes, ma'am.
everybody?
Yes,
Oh,
ma'am.
thank you. I'm Deborah Lewis, and we live at 295 Floyd Drive. And Mr. Mr. Butler has been out there with the excavators and road graders, and they're doing a great job out there. They've dug the ditches, and done what they possibly can do, but I'm not sure what is going to happen across the road. There's 7 homes that I miscounted, there's actually 7 homes that are affected, starting at my residence, where the water comes down, it's at a slope, and it goes all the way to River Road. I don't know if anybody's been out there to look at it, but I don't know. I want to commend Mr. Butler for everything he's done. The road grader, I think his name is Mr. Bobby, and there's a Mr. Jimmy. They've been really good. And the Bullitt County phone company has been out there, so they don't cut the wires. When they cut it real deep. But our neighbor across the road has still, I think, some issues. I don't know how that's going to get resolved. I know the county has an easement on either, in front of our property. We've allowed it. Everyone on the road has allowed for the ditches to be pulled, except for one individual. And I don't know how you're going to handle that. So all the 7 residences that are below us on River Road, Floyd Drive. So, I don't know what else, is anybody want to ask me anything, or?
I'd like to make a comment. Would you repeat that one more time, that the roads department is doing a good job out there?
Why? They really, really are. Well,
I'm good. We know.
I know. Well, that one individual across the road from us has, fussed at him about, messing up his grass, and then he has already yelled at me about, maybe you better watch out, you're gonna fall in your ditch that they put in. So I just went on back to the house and said, okay. So, I try to just go out there and say thank you. But they brought in dirt. There is one little issue I think they found was, as you're turning off of Stilson Wheatfield, like you're heading towards Brooklyn, you come to Floyd Drive, there's a culvert that nobody knew about that's gonna be an issue. But right now, I think everybody has done a great job out there. I'm happy.
Well, thank you very much. And I think rather than getting Mr. Butler to respond at present time, since he's not through, is to let's let him get through and then see what the situation is.
Well, I understand that our individual we're talking about said it was just inconvenient to dig a ditch on his property. That's well and good, it might be an inconvenience, but it is hindering our sewers, not sewers, our septic tanks, and, 2 people had to run trash pumps almost 2 weeks this year because of the runoff. So anyway.
Let's do it a different way then. Any commissioners have any comments? Mr. Butler, would you like to address anything that you've heard, other than y'all are doing a good job?
One more thing. Fred Sherhouse?
Yes, ma'am.
He went up there to go see what was going on Floyd Drive. He said, these guys really know what they're doing. So, Fred's honest.
Mr. Butler, if you would like to.
I'm done, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Thank you all for coming.
We don't hear much of that, that's for sure.
Right.
But I do appreciate the fact that they recognize that we're making an effort, and we are. We've added a culvert pipe in what used to be a dead ramp, and trying to allow some of that water to escape a little better without jumping the back of the ditches and running off on some of the other properties like it was doing in the past. We did pull the ditches, we graded the road recently there. There is some opposition from the adjacent property owner that Ms. Lewis has spoke about, and not wanting the ditch on his side of the road is to hindering his use of his property. I think our county engineer has been there as well, and we've looked at it. We don't know how much good that ditch would do. I'm sure it would do some. What I would ask at this time is to let us go through this process and see what we've done, how that does work, does it function reasonably, and if not, then we can reevaluate the situation. But in trying to keep peace and harmony with everyone, this was our process to start and see where we can get to.
All right. Any commissioners have any comments? Thank you for that report, and thank you again for coming. And we will proceed on and try to get that job completed to the best of our ability. We're going to move next to the consent agenda. We have 7 items. This approval of August 4th minutes and a governmental agreement with the town register. The Ogeechee Juvenile Court Amendment, design taxiway rehabilitation, splash boiler replacement, EMS Lucas purchase, and roll-off container purchases. We can vote on these as a group, or we can single out anything and move into new business that you so desire. What do you say?
Mr. Chairman, I say that we approve the consent agenda altogether.
A motion, have a second. Any more discussion? All those in favor of the motion, show of hands. Consent agenda is now approved. We're gonna move into new business. Well, the collection service contract creditor Bureau Associates of Georgia. And I have Doug and Brian down to lead this discussion. Would y'all like to come and say something about this one?
I'm sorry, Mr. Thompson, we couldn't hear you. This is which item?
This is a collection service contract.
Okay.
Good morning, Brian Hendricks, Deputy Director of EMS. This is just your standard contract for collection agency. We've been using collection agency for approximately 5 years now. The company that we currently are with, we overwhelm them with the amount of accounts that we send them. They're kind of like a mom and pop, if you would, organization. So this is just your standard contract that there's no money involved. Up front, of course, they make a commission off of what they collect for us, so I'll be happy to answer any questions if y'all have any.
What kind of commission do they get?
Around 27%.
Okay.
27% might sound like a lot, but 73% actual collection sounds like a lot better for us.
Yes.
Any other questions or discussion? And I ask for a motion.
Chairman, I move we approve this for the project.
Second.
A motion second, any more discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, show of hands. Unanimous approval. Thank you very much. Mr. Brad Deal, we will have a survey and design of Hood Road.
This contract is for some surveying, some topo surveying and preparing some plans and bid documents for the paving of Hood Road from Paris Road to Pulaski Road. And I'm sure you're all familiar with that road segment. We discussed it a good bit. We got bids from Maxwell, we got quotes, I should say, from Maxwell Red, EMC, Parker Engineering, and Hussey Gay Bell to do this work. And EMC submitted a low quote, and they just recently did similar work on the Miller Street extension and Colfax Station project, which is under construction now. We're just waiting on the contractor to get that going. But EMC completed that project actually ahead of schedule and did a good job on it. My estimate for the work was $60,000, and they came in at $40,335. So it was a good bit below what we had estimated. And we have $1,023,000 budgeted in T-SPLOST funds in fiscal year 21 for dirt road pavement for Hood Road. So that's where the funding would come from. If anybody has any questions, just let me know.
Have any questions?
Brad, I did want to ask you, I knew we was having an issue with fence, we get that straightened out, or we still working on it?
I think we'll work through it with this design work that we're doing here. But yes, I think we're going to be able to avoid having to take down the fence that was in question. It's behind the existing ditch, and I think we're going to be able to shift enough to stay off the fence is what I'm thinking. So.
And what year of completion is Hood Road scheduled for?
That would be December 31st, 2021.
Okay. And it is on schedule to be completed.
It's on schedule. Based on this proposal that EMC gave us, we should have the bid documents ready, the design finished, and the bid documents ready by around the end of the calendar year. And I would estimate that the construction should take roughly 6 months or so.
Okay.
And I'll just add, waiting on some appraisals on the 5 parcels that we're gonna have to condemn. And as soon as I get those appraisals, we'll be bringing you some declarations of taking to adopt to proceed with that. So.
All right. And I think we were all in agreement that we would condemn some parcels if we could not get the signatures. But isn't that mainly from, is that from the landowners, or is this something we're waiting from lending institutions?
This is landowners.
Okay. All right. Any possibility some of them may change their mind, or we don't know?
At this point, I mean, I've tried to reach out to multiple times. I know the one of them, Brad, has tried to reach out to multiple times. I'm just to the point where we need to just move forward.
Yeah.
Especially if we're starting the design work.
Well, probably, and maybe I shouldn't say this, but hey, I say a lot of things I shouldn't say. How long have we been working on this one? 4 years? Well, approximately 4 years, so they hadn't changed their mind by then.
That's a
And we're probably
conservative
talking
guess.
about just a little strip of land. And we made a promise of 2021, and money's been allocated, so, I would say, let's move forward with it. Anybody have any problem with that? All right, then I need a motion to approve the survey.
We'll approve this agreement, there's no further questions.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, any more discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, show of hands. Unanimous approval. Peddlers and solicitors ordinance. Tom, I believe you have this one.
Thank you, sir. Before all of the COVID-19 activity occurred, you all know that we've been discussing this ordinance for several months, and I think when the local emergency transpired in late February or early March, it was on the agenda at one time, I think back in early March, but we determined there were some technical amendments that needed to be worked out with the Sheriff's Department, and we've recently been able to do that. And both the Sheriff's Department, who would enforce the ordinance, and the administrative and legal staff are in agreement that in its form that it's adequate. So we recommend approval of this ordinance. If anybody has any questions, they can let me know, but it's pretty standard, and as you read through it, there's different administrative requirements that people would have to ultimately get license or permits to peddle, but those again would be administered by the Sheriff's Department.
Have any questions? Now that's my motion.
Move to approve, Mr. Chairman, those and solicitors ordinance.
Motion and second, any more discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, show of hands. Unanimous approval of the motion. And you're gonna do the, budget report after commissioner comments?
And that's just a report. If you have questions, feel free. We just wanted to provide a kind of a summary where we are with the budget monthly, and so we'll be sort of putting that in there just for your information. If you have questions, just let us know.
Okay, so that's, okay.
It's just a report.
You're not making a report
No.
today? All right, we'll move on to Commissioner, no, let's go to staff comments first. Anyone here, staff member that would have any comments that they would like to make? Hearing none, any commissioner comments?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to say something, just to kind of explain to the ones that's watching us over the internet about the driver's license and why it come about. You know, a lot of people that selling things, for whatever case it is, it comes into the subdivisions in Bullock County. They pick up 15 or 20 people in a van, and they come from out of town, and they come to these subdivisions, they go door to door, selling things. The sheriff department gets countless numbers of calls at one time when people drop 15 people off in a subdivision, they go every lights up with calls about, there's somebody strange knocking on my door, and this scares people to death. So the reason that was put in place is, whoever, it's not stopping anybody from coming to Book County to steal anything like that. You just got to go by the sheriff's office, get your ID checked, make sure you ain't got an outstanding felony warrant, or you ain't wanted by any means, and then you can come and sell your product any way you want to. But that just gives us at the county office and the sheriff's office, say, okay, well, we're gonna be at Hunter's Point today, and we're gonna be selling vacuum cleaners, so we know who's there and what's going on. So that's the reason it's for it. I just wanted to explain it to everybody, so everybody would know what it is. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Any other comments from the commissioners? I do want to ask a question of the commissioners. I was called last night by a reporter from the Statesboro Herald and wanted to know if we were going to put out a mandate on wearing masks. And my statement to her was, at present time it's undecided. I had not talked with y'all. My personal comments are, we're enforcing it. There are some people that's just not going to wear a mask now. But I do want y'all's opinion. You go to places of business in Statesboro, even though there's a mandate, you might go inside that business and there'll be, or outside in the parking lot, there might be 50% of the people wearing a mask and 50% not. You ask them why don't they have one, and you're going to get a smart remark by some people. But there again, we have a decision to make. We don't have to make it this morning. I've been thinking about this. I think, let me look around this room. I'm thinking I might be the oldest one in this room. I'm not going to embarrass anybody. I might ask Cindy sitting over there how old she is, but I think I am the oldest one. But why should I, at 74 years old, speaking to a lot of people that's younger than I, ask them to wear a mask? They ought to have enough common sense to put one on if they think it's going to help keep from getting this COVID-19. I don't know. I prefer to wear one. I feel more comfortable, that I'm more protected. But for those that don't want to wear one, then I guess that's their own decision. What, commissioners, I'd like to have some advice. What do you think?
Mr. Chairman? Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think we can encourage people. I do see a sign in a lot of stores that we strongly encourage to wear a mask, although it's not required. I see that on a lot of business stores. And what I keep hearing on TV is confusing to me, because these were doctors from Harvard and Purdue and all these other big university hospitals. And a lot of them are saying it's divided. Some are saying they don't do one bit of good in the world, no scientific proof. The other side is saying it protects the other person, it helps you, but it protects the other person. So we live in a country where it's hard to make somebody do it. I have to agree with you. So I think we ought to just, I would recommend it, strongly suggested, but right down to the bottom line, you can't make people put them on.
And I think that's the point there, and I might declare myself as a doctor of common sense. Use common sense. If you feel like it's going to help protect you, then wear one. And if not, and we encourage people to wear them. Now, if you're medically fragile or something, I know you cannot wear one. But if you absolutely don't want to wear one, then I just don't want to wear one. Any other comments? Tom, you were going to come in?
Well, just something to give some thought to. But I think I just wanted to simply clarify the governor's executive order and what your powers are in relation to it. I think you would have the flexibility, if you so chose, but I don't believe you will, to do mask mandates in certain types of establishments as the governor's order provides. And then there's another provision for mandates mandating masks if you so choose inside governmental facilities like our own or anywhere else. I think I know what you all are going to say, and I probably share many of those opinions, but when it comes to governmental facilities, I think I'd like to let our task force continue finishing its work, but I can also relate in the employee survey that we sent out a couple of weeks ago and received feedback on. It's very reflective of the feelings that everybody expresses about masks and other types of interventions nationwide. I would surmise that about 50% of our employees think that it isn't necessary, and there's another 50% that thinks that it is. And like Mr. Thompson, many others like me, choose to wear one and try to be vigilant about it. But I think there's still some practical limitations on what we're able to do. If you did go down the road with governmental facilities, I don't think you will do this in restaurant and bars and things like that, because the critical mass is within the city of Statesboro, or arguably some of the smaller cities that have those establishments. We don't have that many of those kinds of things out in the unincorporated area. So the ultimate decision might be how you want to do it within governmental facilities. And there are options. I haven't seen anything from ACCG yet. The Georgia Municipal Association sort of has a model policy. We'll look at it, but I would probably say at this point, the more you can encourage mask wearing, educate people about it, educate ourselves, the better off we are. You know, if this were Tom Couch Incorporated, I'd probably make everybody wear a mask, but it's not. You know, it's a democratic republic, and you guys are asked to make these tough decisions. But I just wanted to give that for a little background as to where I think the current executive order is at. And I would encourage you to read the order and consult with your constituents, employees, things like that, and ultimately determine what's right, if anything at all, or nothing at all.
And I think the word encouragement is the most important word that we can use. But what say anybody else?
Mr. Chairman, I would just say, personally, I would highly encourage people to wear the mask. Again, we can't make them wear it. The other thing I would say, being African American, we know that statistically it has affected African Americans and other minorities at a greater number. So it will be common sense. I think that we encourage people to do it, but if they choose not to, I guess that's their right. But every time I have the opportunity, I'm going to encourage people to follow the guidelines that have been recommended. It's certain, if it doesn't help, it certainly doesn't hurt us. And but that would be my 2 cents.
Anyone else? Then I would serve.
Mr. Thompson, I've got 2 cents.
Now, if it's about masks, I'll be glad to hear you, but your other time's passed on.
Yeah, about masks.
Okay.
As a Bullock County citizen here.
All right, I'm gonna have to ask you to do this, and this is very, very odd, but I'm gonna let you do it. Step to the podium if it's not mask. And we'll turn to
Well, Mr. Thompson says he might be the oldest one here. Well, I'm getting there too. When we talk about common sense, we also have to think about having a woodshed education, being that where common sense comes from. My problem is this: when we're talking about public safety, which has a lot of responsibility of this forum right here, we also have to look at why do we have rules and regulations. As Mr. Coach was saying, when we come into municipal buildings like this, we may require people to have masks. Well, my sense is that if we have that requirement, in a public office, in a public forum, what is the difference than not having it out in town? I mean, if we're talking about public safety, does wearing a mask and social distancing help prevent this virus from spreading, then we should mandate. That's no different than I'm required to have a driver's license. Why am I required to have a driver's license? It's public safety. I have demonstrated knowledge and wisdom and proficiency in driving. I'm required to pass, if I was to have a weapon, I'm required to have rules and regulations that I have to abide by. Wearing a mask may be inconvenient. I don't like it. I used to wear one when I was in the Navy for 22 years. I didn't like it, but I had to because of public safety. When I go into places like Lowe's, I'm not picking on Lowe's, any place, but when I see signs posted, I walked into Lowe's just yesterday, I stopped counting at 25 people not wearing masks. Why weren't they wearing masks? Because one, they weren't required to wear a mask. Number two, Bullitt County's COVID people that have been identified with this COVID virus is continuously rising. We're over now 1,400 people. So not wearing masks, or not required to wear a mask, is not working. Your rates are continually going up. So I don't understand about not requiring people. You're not helping us to be wiser. I mean, there's a reason why Daddy had that razor strap on the wall. I had a choice. Did I want to decide to do this? Was it worth it? It's not worth people dying. How many people have died in Bullitt County because of coronavirus? I think we're at 17 now. All because, are we practicing the distancing? Are we practicing the wearing a mask consistently? I would strongly recommend to this board to look into this. We're talking public safety. I don't understand why the hesitation is there.
For me, it's not hesitation. It's me telling a grown man to have to wear a mask, and he's not going to wear one.
But if you are in a position of authority, just like when I have a driver's license, just like when I want to go for purchasing a weapon, just like if I wish to go in this building here, if you require people here to wear a mask, my question would be simple. How can you require it here in this building and you don't require it in your county? I mean, look at the reason why you require people here to have a mask. Why did I decide that? And if the answer is because of public safety, I want to ensure that people do not spread the coronavirus, then that same reason has to be applied in the county.
And I understand, and I appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
And I wish everybody had the same, philosophy that you have at present time. That's why I opened it up to the other commissioners. I'm one commissioner that orchestrates and organizes a meeting. I'm not the one that's going to make the final decision. It's these other 6 fellows that's sitting up here beside me that's going to make this final decision. And I will abide by anything that they say do. It's just, I guess personally and individually, is people ought to be smart enough with all of this going on to wear a darn mask. That's what I'm saying. I'm gonna give one more person an opportunity to speak because he's a nice guy. No, ma'am, one more person. Which one of y'all want to speak?
I just have a quick point of information.
Okay.
I support what you just said. The Restore has encountered a number of problems where now we do require a mask. We don't let anyone into the building without a mask. And we have had people actually threaten violence over this issue.
Yeah.
And it would help us if the county and city would make it a requirement that if you're in a public building that you're required to have a mask, because that gives us more teeth to be able to enforce it.
But if we did that, if somebody was in there without a mask, what would you do?
We would call cops.
What would they do? I'm not
Well,
arguing
they might
for
find
it.
them. And that would be fine.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, touch on what, County Manager, said about the task force. Maybe we should get a immediate update or maybe a report from them as soon as possible. I know they spoke on our last meeting, but maybe in light of this situation, that maybe we could get an updated report, and then maybe we can, move forward with better information on what we need to do.
I'm hopeful to have a preliminary meeting with them in a couple of days, and I think this would certainly play into the conversation. We recently went last week over to the courts where Judge Mulgrew asked for advice to handle a very sensitive bond hearing that's coming up tomorrow, and I think Pete Cosby in particular was very helpful in giving them advice on how to social distance in the courtroom, manage the crowd outside. I think we have to re-examine the governor's executive order, and the reality is when you look at that order, it's very narrow where you can mandate masks. You can't do it for the general public with the exception of a narrow band of businesses where people tend to gather more, like restaurants and bars. You're not going to be able to mandate it at Restore. You're not going to be able to mandate it technically at Lowe's. I know there's other cities in particular. I haven't heard of any counties, but I think cities are more willing to challenge the governor's executive order, legally or otherwise. There's a lot of politics and there's a lot of legal issues that surround this, but I think in a lot of these circumstances, I go back to the critical mass, it's all going to come back to the city of Statesboro because that's where the critical mass is. Probably the biggest thing we would want to control, if you want to call it control, or exercising any control, would be within our buildings. And I think we have to consider that thoughtfully because the city's a little different. You've got City Hall, you've got the police department, you have a few fire stations. We have all the parks that have indoor and outdoor buildings. We have the courts, which I don't know if the mandate matches up with the emergency judicial order. Of course, you have the sheriff's department and the jail. We're like Noah's Ark. We've got every animal you can imagine that we got to get on this boat, and it's not easy to rein them all in. And when I say rein, it's not about control, but they're different environments everywhere. But to answer your question, yes, the task force will be talking about that, and we would like to try to produce some firmer recommendations by our first meeting in September. I think that was the original goal.
Well, let's set that as a goal with him. Mm-hmm. And what I am proud of for the commissioners that come up here a good bit, and those that not a lot, we already practice that up here. And it's on a voluntary basis. And it's not mandated, but everybody is taking this very, very serious. But we will have a voting decision made, first meeting, September the 1st.
I believe so. Or the first Tuesday in September, whatever day
I think that is the
first. Okay.
And so if there is nothing else, and Ms. Barr, I apologize, but I know 4 minutes.
If you'd like to give me the last two that Mr. Toole didn't use, I'd be happy to speak.
Yes, ma'am, you can have 2
Thank you, sir.
or 3 minutes and 33 seconds.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that. I know this is hard stuff, guys, but I'm kind of with you, Roy, with the doctor of common sense. If you believed that I was infected with COVID and I came up to talk to you, it's common sense. You don't want me in your face like this. You want me to have that mask because you believe it's going to protect you, and it does. I mean, we know that. We know the mask helps stop transmission. We're not responsible for the thought process of the folks who are seeing it as a personal liberty trespass. We can't make decisions
situations for other people. People are gonna respond the way that they do. Our responsibility is to do the best that we can, and those of us who have been elected or hired to help ensure public safety, to me it feels like a moral responsibility to do anything I can to encourage it. So, and I also really believe, I have wavered on this myself because of the possibility of just crystallizing resistance. But at this point, I believe that still the vast majority of people in Bullock County and Statesboro have some trust left in their authorities, and the vast majority of people, if the county and or the city say this is going to help us keep healthier, please wear your mask, we're mandating masks, I think the vast majority of people will put them on. I think it will really help us control the spread. So I'm in favor of authorities doing all they can to mandate mask wearing to make us all safer. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Then I'm gonna ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So, Chairman.
More discussion, all those in favor, show of hands. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all for coming.